Caitlin Clark has made a bold move, and now ESPN and the WNBA are left reeling. Clark's decision to sign with a European team has sent shockwaves through the sports world, and there's no going back. No matter how much ESPN tries to spin it, Clark is done playing their game. She's packed her bags and is heading to a league where her talent will be appreciated. Why? Because Caitlin Clark knows her worth, and the WNBA never gave her the respect she deserved. Let's cut to the chase. The WNBA has struggled for years to protect its players, and its biggest star, Caitlin Clark, was no exception. From day one, she faced a level of physicality that went far beyond what's acceptable in professional basketball. She was fouled, elbowed, and body-checked relentlessly, while the referees looked the other way. Clark herself even said, "I feel like I'm getting hammered, and everyone is physical with me." Yet, the league stood by and let it happen. The WNBA had a generational talent in Clark, someone who could have been the face of the league for years to come. But instead of protecting her, they let her become a target on the court. And now that she's decided she's had enough, ESPN and the WNBA are scrambling to figure out what went wrong. The truth is, they had every opportunity to treat her like the star she is, but they blew it. Now, they're left watching as Clark takes her talents to Europe, where she'll get the respect she deserves. The physical abuse Clark endured on the court was shocking. But what's even more surprising is how little the WNBA did to protect her. Every game, it seemed like Clark was stepping into a UFC match, not a basketball game. She was fouled hard, shoved, and elbowed, yet the referees rarely stepped in to control the game. It wasn't just about the missed calls, though. There was a clear lack of concern for Clark's safety. One of the most infamous moments came during a playoff game when Clark was poked in the eye by an opposing player, a move that seemed intentional. The refs didn't even stop the game to review it. No foul, no flagrant, nothing. It was like they were blind to what was happening right in front of them. This was just one of many examples of how Clark was treated like a punching bag, and it was the final straw. For a league that prides itself on equality and opportunity, the WNBA failed its biggest star. Clark was more than just a player. She was the lifeline of the league. But instead of treating her like royalty, they left her out to dry. The emotional toll of constantly being fouled, criticized, and unprotected on the court would break anyone down. Clark carried her team, night in and night out. And what did she get in return? Nothing but cheap shots and missed calls? It wasn't just the physicality that pushed Clark away. The WNBA's officiating was consistently terrible, and it was clear that the league wasn't doing enough to protect its players, especially its stars. And let's not forget ESPN's role in this. While Clark was breaking records and drawing huge crowds, ESPN treated her like just another player. Sure, they gave her some coverage, but it was never enough to reflect the impact she was having on the game. They completely underestimated her value. Clark's final game in the WNBA was a perfect example of how she was left to fend for herself. She put up an incredible 29 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds in a playoff game against the Connecticut Sun. She was, as usual, a one-woman show. Meanwhile, her teammates struggled to make open shots and committed error after error. Clark did everything in her power to win that game, but the refs allowed her to get hacked and fouled without any calls. It was clear that the league had no intention of protecting her, and Clark had no reason to stick around. And here's where it gets even more frustrating. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another star player. She was the star of the league. The numbers don't lie. Before Clark joined the Indiana Fever, the team was struggling to draw 3,000 fans per game. But once Clark arrived, that number skyrocketed to 177,000 fans per game, a 400% increase. She didn't just bring fans to the Fever either. She boosted attendance across the entire league. Wherever Clark played, arenas were packed. Her impact extended beyond attendance. Caitlin Clark's jersey became the best-selling in WNBA history, outselling legends like Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi. She's a rookie, and she's already breaking records set by Hall of Famers. And let's talk about viewership. Clark's games drew 1.5 million viewers, more than some NBA games on TNT. Yet, despite all of this, the WNBA and ESPN still didn't treat her like the superstar she is. They dropped the ball, and now they're paying the price. What's truly remarkable is that even as Clark was putting the WNBA on the map, the media focused on ridiculous narratives instead of her talent. Alyssa Thomas of the Connecticut Sun went so far as to claim that Clark's popularity was rooted in racial dynamics rather than her jaw-dropping talent. ESPN, instead of focusing on Clark's incredible performances, ran with this narrative, framing her success through the lens of race. It was absurd. Clark had to defend herself, insisting that her success was a result of hard work and grit, not racial bias. It's mind-boggling that she even had to address this, given the record she was breaking and the performances she was putting up. Yet, instead of celebrating her as a generational talent, the media turned her success into a racial conversation. It's a disservice to Clark, and it's a reflection of how twisted the media's coverage of her has been. ESPN and the WNBA failed to recognize the treasure they had in Clark, and now they're left scrambling. They could have built an empire around her. She was the kind of player that comes along once in a generation, and instead of building her up, they let her slip away. The WNBA and ESPN had every opportunity to spotlight her as the future of the league, but they didn't. They let off-court distractions and controversies overshadow her talents, and now they've lost her. Clark's departure to Europe isn't just a loss for the WNBA, it's a catastrophe. She was the heartbeat of the league, the player who could have transformed it into something bigger. But now, the WNBA and ESPN are left with a massive void. They're going to struggle to fill the gap left by Clark, and it's not going to be easy. She was their meal ticket, their chance at relevance, and they let her go. As for Clark, she's moving on to bigger and better things. In Europe, she'll finally get the respect she deserves. She won't have to endure the physical abuse, missed calls, and media distractions that plagued her time in the WNBA. She's heading to a league that will value her talents, where she'll be treated like the star she is. Clark knows her worth, and she's not going to settle for anything less. For ESPN and the WNBA, this should be a wake-up call. You don't get players like Caitlin Clark every day, and when you do, you treat them like royalty. Instead, they fumbled the opportunity, and now they're left holding nothing. Clark was their golden goose, and now she's gone. The league had a chance to build an empire around her, but they dropped the ball in every possible way. What happens now? Caitlin Clark is heading to Europe, and she's not looking back. The WNBA will be hard-pressed to find someone who can match her star power. ESPN will have to say goodbye to the boost in ratings, the increase in merchandise sales, and all the buzz that Clark brought to the league. They had everything they needed to make her the face of women's basketball, but now they're left scrambling, trying to figure out how they let it all slip away. Clark's departure isn't just a loss for the WNBA. It's a sign that the league needs to get its act together. They failed to protect their biggest star, failed to recognize her value, and now they're left with the consequences. Caitlin Clark is off to Europe, where she'll finally get the recognition she deserves, and the WNBA is left staring at a massive void they might never be able to fill. As Clark takes her talents overseas, one thing is clear: she deserves way better than the WNBA could ever offer. She was their lifeline, their pulse, their chance at greatness, and they blew it. Now, all that's left is for ESPN and the WNBA to figure out how they let a generational talent slip through their fingers. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on the latest sports news and hot takes. Stay tuned for more.